But no, no. Is there regular? But no, is there kosher milk?
It's so hard to ballpark it. You think it's not that big, I mean, fruit wise, but the amount of people is what's an hour, but
Gewaldig.
You know where my cousin's store is?
Which way? Binnick? That's in the stolen the Binnicks? Stolen the Binnicks and stolen. Kyle, it's stolen. Yeah, the Binnicks. The Binnicks are big time stolen. Yeah. You and they're not our height either. They're tall. Yeah. Yeah. No, they're your cousin. Makes a lot of sense. Yeah, but I'm telling you, that's what it was. Oh, who's there? What do we got today? Hey, hello, Rabbi Dinnerman. I also didn't done yet. Don't worry about it. And then look them catch and do so we get down. There's no V live Steve. Oh, some sound. Which is, by the way, one other thing over here. You will find at the medical care here. Keep with the hearts.
yeah, I came here for a specialist, like for a special
Here,
yeah.
here or in
Miami.
in Miami. Yep, very good. Oh, David, where'd you just on thing? So we're trying to figure out where we're related. For we came to Mishbuch in the Heim, they don't come from the Switzerland. Original Switzerland is?
Yeah.
I mean, not even one of us, not one of no English blood whatsoever. And yet you're going with a Bubba for hit?
So actually, my grandfather was the real Yaka.
Yeah.
The black and everything.
Just like you, Jerry. It sounds just like you.
Why?
Because also mixed up. You told
Oh, my father mixed up. I'm really
no. Jerry over here is a Litvak on one end and a Hasidish at the bears. A Hasidish. Ah, Daddy. Good morning. Good morning. Okay, all's well in the world, but Hashem, you're wearing the tie.
Where you holding?
Well, we're holding 10B1.
That feud?
Yud, Daf Yud Amid Aleph.
West to Israel's pledge to ratchet up its
10B1. Excuse me, 10B1.
With Aleph?
organization praised his
10B
attacks
and
against
Yud Amid Beis. You have to say Yud Amid Beis.
1 second.
It stopped Jews from claiming responsibility for any
What? 10?
Yud Amid Beis. Yud Amid Beis, right on top.
Okay.
We're up to Toshma. And again, if I fall asleep in the middle of this, all bear with me.
Well, what
Okay.
time you come home?
1 o'clock in the morning. I just woke up not 10, 15 minutes ago. So there you go. So it was a nice run, but I must say I miss Houston.
You miss Houston? Why?
I always enjoy that town. For a big city and a small town feel. But what a day. What a run. Okay, so we are holding Daf Yud Amid Beis 10B1. Okay, Toshma. Okay, we're up. It's about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 lines from the top. So we're on 10B1. Okay. Good morning, Ben. 10B1. And we begin. Okay. Zakti Gemara. Toshma. Oh, once again, Ben, we must shut the door. This is a
What are you trying to find out?
They're trying to find out whether Bia, otherwise known as cohabitation, can affect with the snap of a finger both Erisin and Nisuin. To which Rabbi Warman over here, Avi Warman, had made that point way back, and I didn't let him get away with it at the time because the Gemara was standing there. Okay? So the idea being, we all understand that Kesef money deals with what it deals with. Erison, here we go. The star, a document, creates the marriage, Erison. But since Bia by itself, obviously, is a creator of Nisuin, because that's how Nisuin is completed, if you think about it, actual marriage is the cohabitation part of marriage. Do we say that if I'm using Bia, can it be a one-stop shopping? Like this, I do Bia to engage the girl, okay, to start Erison, and by doing so, I've already done Nisuin. So she goes
Right.
automatically, boom.
That's why it's called in English consummation of the marriage.
Very good. Consummation of the marriage. Very good. That's a good, there you go. So yeah, okay, which we talked about last time, what exactly you have to have in mind. We haven't gotten. Now you have to remember this. This is all theoretical. Because at the end of this, we're going to say we don't do this. Because it's just not proper. Okay? So let's take this one step further, and we'll talk about it at that time. Because if it's not proper, then why did you say in the first place that I can engage her with Bia? So we need to always ask that second question, but let's get to it. Tashma, ukava shalach Yochanan ben Bagbag, Eitzel Rabbi Yehuda ben Beser Linitzivin. That was a place. Shamati elecha, I have heard about you. Sha'ata oimer, that you say, Arusa bas Yisrael oicheles betruma, that a daughter of a regular Jew who is engaged to a kohen is allowed to eat truma right away, and she does not have to wait till nisuin to do so. She doesn't have to wait for full-fledged marriage to already be starting to be able to eat truma. Shalach loy, Rabbi Yehuda ben Beser sent back, v'hati iyata amakain, and you, don't you say that as well? Muchzakni b'chol sha'ata boki b'chadri Torah. It's established to me that you're versed in areas of the Torah. Lidrash b'kal v'chayni iyata yadeya. Do you not know how to do a kal v'chayma? Uma shivcha kananis. A regular shivcha kananis, a slave woman, a goyish slave woman. We find that a kohen who sleeps with her does not entitle her to eat teruma. Okay? In other words, if she's bought with money, right? Once she's bought with money, she's allowed to eat teruma. Okay? But Bashma here, that if he were to sleep with her, if a kohen were to sleep with an eved and a shivcha kananis for the purposes of getting married, fell in love with her, and he wants to marry her, that would not entitle her to eat teruma, because a kohen is not allowed to marry a shivcha kananis. Nobody is. It's an illegal marriage. So Zogti Gemara, Zu, this woman who is the wife of a kohen, should be also mechilasa b'truma. We find, right? I'm sorry. Good morning, Jeff. She ain't be also mechilas teruma. Who's bia with her cohabitation with her does not entitle her to eat truma. Nonetheless, if you purchase her with money, in other words, you purchase the slave woman with money, she becomes part of your possessions. If she becomes part of your possessions, she's entitled to eat teruma, right? That we always said, right? Zu, that this woman, who is the wife of a kohen, by dint of eris in the first step of marriage, should be also machilas b'truma. We find that the kohen's sleeping with her entitles her to eat the truma. 10b2. Is it not logical that betrothed her through money shall also allow her to eat teruma? That's very logical. If Madach, a slave woman, who, if you try to sleep with her, does not entitle her to eat truma, but if you go ahead, good morning, David.
Yitzhak, can you
Yeah,
repeat that?
yeah. I'm sorry. I didn't see where I put the coffee. Okay. If Madach, a slave woman, which by sleeping, the kohen sleeping with her, did not entitle her to eat truma. But if the kohen went in and bought her with money, does entitle her to eat truma, then a woman that could be engaged and be married through beer, Eno din, that money, that by doing what he called marrying her with money, even at the stage of should allow it to eat truma.
Very good.
But the problem, but what can I do? The Kabbalah is great, but what can I do? Sharei Amru Chachamim, because the sages have said as a rabbinical decree. I'm sorry. Hang on 1 second, everybody.
Take care. Have a good Shabbos. Okay, bye-bye. Bye.
What?
What happened? Yitzchak,
Yes.
to me, the Kal V'chomer is flawed
Go ahead.
because by a Shifra Kananis, beer is not for marriage. It doesn't do anything. Only Kinyan Kaspoy allows
Money.
it.
Money.
Whereas by an Omer Ivriya, beer brings her in
Marriage. Consummates the marriage.
Right. So what one has nothing to do. You cannot make a Kal V'chomer.
No, what he's saying is a leniency to find a stringency. Here I have a situation where to bring a Goyish slave woman into marriage, I can't do Bia. Bia accomplishes nothing. It accomplishes
the Kiddushin is not typhus.
the Kiddushin is not typhus.
Right.
Nonetheless, this same exact woman, if I purchase her with money, she could eat truma.
Because it's Kinyan Kaspoy.
Like, I understand that, but it would allow it to eat truma.
Right.
So beer won't, money will. That's all we got here. Beer won't, money will.
It
Then
won't
a woman,
because it's
then
not
a woman that beer will, then money certainly will. That's it.
What's the difference? Kesef.
We're not. What do you mean?
Saying you are saying it's Kesef.
Oh. That's what the Kal V'chomer is saying. The Kal V'chomer is saying if Madach, a woman where beer does not allow it to eat truma, money allows it to eat truma, then a woman where beer would allow it to eat truma, and I did that money would allow it to eat truma, right? But manas, finish the next words. Elamas sharei amru chachamim. Along came the sages. And they said the following: Ein arusa bas Yisrael lechelas betruba ad shetikones lechuppah. A daughter of a Yisrael, in other words, a regular Jewish girl who is betrothed to a kohen, is not yet allowed to eat truma until we get to the final stages of marriage. That against it, exactly what the Yehuda B'Besei was saying. So Zok Gemara, hey Chidami, what is this case of money and cohabitation? If we're dealing with cohabitation that is accompanied by an act of chuppah, okay, you're deliberately bringing her under your roof, okay. That then everybody can eat. Of course, you can eat truma. She's fully married. Ella, we must be talking about bia shal yedei chuppah. We are talking about cohabitation that is accompanied by chuppah. V'kesef shaloy al yedei chuppah. And from here, we got to deal with money which is not accompanied by chuppah. Okay, it is only Kiddushin, not nisuin. What? In my mind, I'm only doing it for Erison. She's still living at home with her father. Her father can still has rights in her, etc. Zakti Gemara Hacha Tarte. Here in the case of cohabitation, there are two actions that are taking place: cohabitation and chuppah. V'hacha Chada, in money, there's only one action. What's taking place? The giving of the money has taken place. Elalav, right? We now arrive here. Where's Rabbi Yehuda talking? Yehuda ben Beseir talking. Right? A beer with that's not accompanied by chuppah. The kesef shaloya yidei. And we're going to agree, everybody, that it's money that's not accompanied by chuppah, which should allow, and this would be the explanation of the Kal V'Chayla, right? That even though we're dealing at the Erisin, the first step of marriage location, right? According to Rabbi Yehuda, the Kal V'Chayla would seem to allow that she can eat Truma at Erisin through Bia or through money. And it's only because the Chachamim came along and said, we're not going to allow this to happen, that she can't. In other words, by the ikar of the law, she should be allowed to eat Truma the moment she is brought into marriage through Eris in the engagement. And it's because of something out of left field, a technical problem, that she can't. Biblically, she could. Rabbinically, they didn't want it. Okay? So something Gemara.
Give it to a sibling.
Well, and as my father said, what is the real problem? The real problem that the Rabbanim were worried about, the basic problem, is the problem of Ula, which is she'll go visit her in-laws, they'll give her something to eat, they'll give her a piece of a truma cake, and she'll bring it home, and she'll share it with her siblings, who are certainly not allowed to eat truma. And that's a perfectly normal situation. And that we don't want, obviously. So therefore, we don't allow her while she's engaged. And why? Because during engagement, whose house is she living in? Her father's house.
She's allowed to eat herself.
So biblically, based upon the logic we just said. So now, if you want to say that sleeping with her for the sake of Kiddushin, with the snap of a finger, becomes Nisuin as well, becomes a full-fledged marriage. We've covered all in one. We understand why Rabbi Yehuda ben Seir said that Kiddushin through cohabitation is clearly more powerful than Kiddushin made with money. Kiddushin made with money only accomplishes one thing. Kiddushin, Erison. Bia, according to this, accomplishes both. Erison and Nisuin in one trip. You know the way we make the marriage. We've been talking about today, right? Put the ring on the finger. That's Erison. She's standing under the chuppah, so we've already began the transition. By the time she finishes and gets to the yichud room, we're already did Nisuin. So in essence, we do the whole thing from Erison to Nisuin pretty much in one fell swoop. They're saying over here. So kesef, money, only accomplishes what? Kiddushin. We call it Kiddushin, right? We call it Kiddushin. Reyat mikudeshesli. You are hereby sanctified to me. What is that? The first step of marriage, right? So that's all you did there. Then there are different steps. Here they're saying, let's do this all in one. Do the bia, to sleep with her, and you'll cover the erisin and the nisuin. Money only does what? Money can only accomplish for step one, Kiddushin. So what's more powerful? Sleeping with her, because that could accomplish much more than money.
Say
Okay? Cohabitation, sorry.
So nowadays, Harrison is never done. Fathers.
No, the Harrison is done.
But it's done within the wedding ceremony.
Right. Never before.
Okay.
Never, even by the Chassidim, when they break the plate early, that's a tenoyan, conditions. That's really at the parent level. It's at the parent level. I'm going to do this, you're going to do this, ba-bi. And we guys,
Financial transaction.
we do the tenoyan even at the marriage, at the chassan station. And by the way, 5 minutes after you break that plate, it's gone. because you signed the chup, you signed the ksuba. The moment the ksuba is signed, it overrides the tonight. That's how fast we try to get rid of the tonight. Okay,
So the aid is kind of just like a.
for 5 minutes. For 5 minutes, really? Because that's what they did back in the day, and we're just following along exactly the way they did it, like they did it before, like we learned the other day. It gets interesting as you work through these commercials. We get to see how did we come to the marriage ceremony that we got to today. The truncated, pulled together, right? You're beginning to see the why of it, by the way. Okay, now this works out that therefore sleeping with her, cohabitation, is far greater than money because it could accomplish more.
know,
But if you
my
want to,
bad way you talk.
what?
In the olden days, the the color and the hussen, they themselves had to prepare what they needed for the marriage. So it took a whole year to give them time. Today, the parents to pay for everything. They set them up everything so there's no reason to wait. Therefore, you
Excellent.
comes together. That's all.
I was getting to that exactly.
Yeah.
That is what made you now. That's not 100% true because the Tanaim even then, the Gemara said, one father said, "How much are you giving for your son?" And the other father said, "How much are you giving for your daughter?" So and so
If
and
you're
so.
kidding, but it's the Husen color that's it. That is
Exactly.
comparing it most.
Yeah, exactly. Who's buying the bedroom? Said the whole thing. But at the end, we all know in those days who was really responsible. Not a big. When you had to get married, you had $4 in your pocket. My father likes to say when he got married, he had $200 in his pocket. That was it, right? That was it. Anyways, so what did you need? You did a dollar and a dream. Ella e amrit kedushin isa. But if you say that cohabitation, sleeping together, only has the power to establish what's going on, i.e., Erisin, just Kiddushin. That's all the power that it has, like anything else. Then why is it regarding Kiddushin through cohabitation that it's obvious to Rabbi Yehuda that it allows her to eat truma? Why in the case of money, which also can only accomplish Erisin, the first step, he's uncertain whether it allows her to eat truma or not, right? Rather, the fact of the matter is, we have to conclude that Bia, according to Rabbi Yehuda,
It's stronger.
habitation has the power to create Erisin and Nisuin exactly at the same time. Because otherwise, if you want to say that Bia only has the power to accomplish Erisin, because that's what we're dealing with now, then it's no different than money. Then why would one that only accomplishes Erisin automatically allow it to eat truma? And the other, I'm not 100% sure if that's true. That doesn't make any sense. Elamai, it's got to be, according to at least Rabbi Yehuda, that Bia, sleeping with her, accomplishes everything. It's an all-in-one. Now I can understand why that would think, because she's fully married. Money is questionable because it's only partially married. Okay? That's what Rabbi Yehuda said.
Consummate a marriage with beer.
Bia, that's it. And it's a full consummation.
Right.
The point is, it takes care of everything. It's an all-in-one.
Yeah.
So Zogdig right now. Amar Rav Nachman by Yitzchak, Li'olam Eimalach Bia Shal Yidei Chopa. I'll tell you that a Bia only accomplishes Chopa. Right? It comes along with Chopa. The Kasim Shaloi Yidei Chopa, and we're dealing with a case with money which is not accompanied by Chopa. Which should, what do you call it? Let's see, we could the Amrit. And as you objected, how could you do a comparison? If one is accompanied by chuppah, it means it's a full-fledged, the whole thing is happening, right? Erisin and Kiddushin. If one is not accompanied by chuppah, then only one portion is taking place, Erisin. So you're comparing apples to oranges. It's not a fair comparison. You can't learn anything out. 10b3. And you're going to say, nonetheless, Kal v'chayma miya isa, I could still do a kal v'chayma. It's unbalanced. One is coming along, the B is coming along with chuppah, the kesef is not coming along with chuppah. So how do you do the comparison? And this is what I said. Uma shivcha kenanis, the Kenani maidservant. Okay? Shein bi also mechilat b'truma. That the kohen sleeping with her accomplishes nothing with regard to allowing her to eat truma. Afilu al yidei chuppah. Even when he has in mind for marriage. Even when he has in mind for marriage, it's no good. Look at number 20 on the bottom, everybody. Neither Kiddushin nor Nisuin will take effect between a Jewish man and a non-Jewish woman. Hence, if a kohen would cohabit with the Canaan maidservant and perform chuppah, the action is legally meaningless and would not entitle her to eat teruma. She's not Jewish. So Kiddushin is not typhus with a non-Jewish woman.
If a Canaanite male slave is owned by a Jew, he takes on the mitzvahs of a female Jew.
Correct.
But so we're saying though that a female
No,
Canaanite,
she also takes on the mitzvahs of a Jew. We're not talking about that. We're not talking about his own.
so
his
it's
own-
just random.
It could be his
All right,
secondary.
so it's not his.
But regardless, even if it's his own, the kohen is not allowed to take. He's not allowed to marry a shivcha kenan. We're not allowed to marry shivcha kenanis. Okay,
There you go. That's all.
you cannot. A kohen cannot marry a convert. That's number one. Number two, even a regular person is not allowed to marry a shivcha kenanis. She has mitzvahs like an isha, and she has dinim, and therefore she's a quasi Jew. She is a quasi Jew. Nonetheless, we are free. This is an important, unbelievable understanding. We are free, and we come to serve the Rabbeinu Shloim in freedom. Let me repeat that. This week's parsha, V'hayut, I'm going to be talking about that today, actually. On the thing, V'hayut kisavayu zakta arachayim. V'hayut is a lashon of simcha, of joy. The first mitzvah in the parsha this week is Bikurim. You know why? Because Bikurim is brought with joy. The end of Masechtas Tainus, the Yevonim, when they would start to get powerful, one of the first things they decreed against was the bringing of Bikurim. Says the Marsha, you know why? Because they were brought with joy. So they wanted to take the joy out of Judaism. And if you read the title, right, the abomination, the terrible abomination, the suppression, it says in the middle. Why? Because I'm so tired. Because you didn't serve Hashem. Because you didn't serve God with joy and gladness of heart when you had all. Not that you didn't serve God. You served God. But you pressed the button. You were mechanical about it. There was no joy. There was no thing. Says David, if that's the case, you're back in Mitzrayim. That's what those were slaves. That's what a slave does. When they tell you to wake up, you wake up. When you tell you to go to sleep, you go to sleep. They tell you what to do. You have no choice. Says David, such slaves I don't need. That's not what I need. I don't need robots. I need people who come and say, I am a slave of the Eibishter. I choose. We said Nasa v'nishma. We chose. You can only do that when you come from freedom. To marry a girl that's not free is the antithesis. No. Shivcha Kenanis. Talking Kenanis, who already is doing mitzvahs. A non-Jewish woman, that's because of chasnus. What happened with Shlomo HaMelech when he married all those girls? Now, again, when we say Shlomo HaMelech married 1,000 girls, that doesn't mean he married 1,000 girls. In those days, whenever they made a peace treaty with somebody, one of the rules were you gave over one of the princesses married the guy you made a treaty with, the guy with the stronger. Shlomo HaMelech was theoretically king of the world, meaning he had peace treaties with 1,000 countries, and he had 1,000 wives. The problem is, you get 1,000 wives, and they're all non-Jewish, right? By the end of his life, they had him serving Avodah Zarah. A wife, as we all know, you take on a wife, you're giving away a certain amount of freedom. But that's not mamish, of course not. I don't mean that. That's exactly right. And that is the other thing, by the way. Guy is an animal. The guy is a lot of fun. Okay, it sounds better in Yiddish, but there you go. Exactly. Now you know why we said the good. Okay, I will say this just as an aside. I remember going when I was going for my master's in Baruch, and my class was full of mostly black women. Okay, who I came to understand. They were all single. Some of them had babies.
You were a pride.
What is not? But you're right. But in reality, what do you call it? I realized that none of them wanted to get married because none of their men were worth anything. All they needed men for was to get pregnant. That's it. But I realized something. Goyish women are so easy. It was a frightening insight by me. I said, I begin to understand why the Rabbanon were so against college. You can see this. What a problem. The world out there.
Wait a minute, my wife went to Baruch too. She wasn't so.
Because she's Jewish. Because she's Jewish. That's the difference. I didn't say that. I didn't say Baruch.
My wife was part of a 50 young ladies sorority house.
Right? So you know. So there. We guys are so innocent. We think we know the world. We are so freaking innocent. It's unbelievable. Yeah, but I'm just saying, you know what I'm talking about. What he called it at the time. I remember saying, Rabbanishim, this is I see the danger. I can literally see the danger. No, you didn't. You didn't. No, you can only see the problems. You can only see the problems. Anyway, so all right, so let's keep going. Sleeping with the shibcha kananis does not allow it to eat truma. Afilu al yidei chuppah, because there's no such thing as chuppah by a shibcha kananis. Kaspa mechila b'loy b'loy chuppah, but purchases occur with money. Obviously, without chuppah, nothing to do with marriage. This purchase occurs as kinyan kaspa. In other words, as a purchase, does allow it to eat. It does allow it to eat truma. Zu should be basim ichilasim b'truma yidei chuppah. Then regarding this wife. This woman that if I take her through cohabitation with chuppah allows her to eat truma. Isn't it not that if I give her money for erison and it should allow it to eat truma even without chuppah? Because of Ula's concern. What was Ula's concern? Again, that she's going to bring home food and give it to her siblings who clearly are not connected to the Kaya. So, right? Yeah. Why does he have a problem with Rabbi Yehuda ben Mesei's Kavachayma? Because he argues that the Kinyan through money that acquires the Shibcha Kananis cannot be compared to the Kinyan through money that betroths a woman. The buyer leaves nothing behind in her acquisition when acquiring her through money, right? The purchase of a slave is completely finalized by the act. Here we've got a problem. We only have a half a kinyan. Erison. We didn't complete the job. And that problem is actually a very good problem. In other words, When a girl is in Erison, engaged, remember, while she's a Nara, between 12 and 12 and a half, she's in a nishtaheh position. She's neither here nor there. If she makes a vow, she has to have both her husband and their father agree to disallow the vow. Any of her findings, if she finds something, goes to the husband or the father. My point I'm trying to say is that there's an incompleteness here. Says the Gemara, if there's an incompleteness, I could see where I'm not allowing you to start eating truma when you're still connected on some level to your father's home, and your father wasn't the kohen. Simple. That's it.
You could split it sometimes.
We are split. Erison is a split. She's married. She's married. No. You give the money. That creates Erison. But Erison puts her in a position of being in two houses at the same time. Still in her father's house, but 1 foot out into her husband's house. Nisuin takes both feet out of her father's house and puts her into the husband's house. Right.
Progress,
Yeah, well, a bogus is something else.
No down payment.
Once she's 12 and a half, she's an adult. She's not in her father's house.
So what happens when you do Kiddushin with someone who's an adult? Where's she for that year? Where's she living?
She's still living with her father.
So is there still
No.
concern?
No.
Then he's not concerned anymore.
But even there, we don't do that. We don't split the baby. Even there, we don't. She cannot eat truma because of Ur.
Right, but saying all those concerns is the same when she's a
Yeah, it don't make it that does.
But once she's married, can she bring truma to her family?
When she's fully married, no.
As what? As a what?
But she's not living there, so he's not.
She's not
Should
living
she
there.
get married? What is she-
No. He said once she's married, can she
Because it said before, she can.
fully married to a kohen?
She cannot eat truma because she not give it to her family.
Mhm.
But once she's married.
Correct.
And she brings home to her parents and says she can't do that.
No. So for an example, she goes to their house for Pesach. She cannot bring food. That is correct.
If she has a son with a Cohen,
Yeah.
the Cohen dies and she goes back and lives with the father with the son. She can have teruma, but the father cannot.
Not cannot. She lives with what do you call it? If she still has a church, she could still have truma
Correct.
for the sake of her son.
But I'm saying, if she moved to her father's house with her
So
son.
that's
So she
probably
cannot, the son can.
right. Then she cannot, and then the son can.
Okay.
Again, not that she can't. She can, but
But
there's
not
a
in her father's
technical
house.
problem that the Abu. Right. And it's a terrible Aveira.
What they
Again,
do,
it's God's food.
it's
It's God's food. What?
they do is they make a special room for her, so that when she eats. Oh, she doesn't eat together with the sibling.
Or to put this another way, I have
But she's eating through her son. She's not.
not getting through her son, not through herself. Correct.
If she had a daughter, she could.
Because our children get nothing.
Where she eat.
And I'll tell you something else. I understood.
If she had a daughter, wouldn't have.
No, she's not. We're not. And I'll tell you, I have a friend, Isaac Rosenblatt. He was here a few weeks ago. From Russia and all that. So when his parents came to America, they ended up in Boise, Idaho. That's where they found the house. Whatever, beautiful, big Russian community in Boise.
Love the potatoes.
Right. So when he went to visit them, they of course were not Orthodox. They came out of Russia, nothing. He had his pots and pans locked up in a special, drawer, cabinet, and it was under lock and key in his parents' home. So that when he came, he had his own pots and pans to be able to use to make food. Same, literally, what my father said with regard to truma, if she has to come home to her father's house, that's what they did. They'd have to make a separate kitchen for her. That's all. All right. Ravina says, okay, Ravina Ama, I'll tell you that Bia affects only Kiddushin. And this is how it should be understood. Midia Raisa, Bagbag holds that Midia Raisa Minat Torah law. That of course you can eat Truma. The bottom line is you've begun the marriage. She's begun to go over to the husband's property. Okay? And it's bia. And cohabitation, as my father likes to say, it finishes. Even though it's only for Kiddushin, but it's so powerful. But the objection that he said was only rabbinic. This is what he sent him. I heard about you. That an arusa of a regular Jewish girl can eat shuruma right away. And you're not concerned about the annulling force that might retroactively invalid the Kiddushin. What happens if something is found wrong with the whole thing? Look at number 27 on the bottom. A sipine is a term that denotes a force of annulment or cancellation. A receipt for the payment of a loan is a symptom of a promissory note. The Gemara uses this thing to refer to a physical blemish whose discovery would retroactively annul a woman's Kiddushin. In the lines that follow, the Gemara also uses this term to refer to factors that could annul the purchase of Canaanite maidservant. Same idea.
It's a defect.
I don't want to. I hate to use the word. I don't want to use the word defect. Okay, so this is important. We need to talk about it. We need to talk about this for a second. What does this mean, defect? Who creates a person? What did Moshe Rabbeinu, when Moshe Rabbeinu said to Hashem, send somebody else, V'ani aral sefasayim. I'm an aral sefasayim. I have a thickness of lips. I have a stutter. And Hashem said, me some pel adam. Who gave a mouth to a person? Who made them this way? Who made them the mass way? Right? Ani Hashem. I am God. In other words, if I make them, they're perfect.
Yeah, but you may.
Wait, Daddy, let me finish. The question is an obvious question. Nonetheless, we find the same God that said this also gave an halacha that a Baal Mum, somebody who has a defect, cannot do the avodah in the Beis Hamikdash, cannot do the avodah in the Mizbeach. A kohen who has a Baal Mum that has a defect cannot serve in the Beis Hamikdash. But that same kohen with the defect is allowed to eat truma. So he is a kohen. He's a full-fledged kohen.
Yeah.
HaKadosh Baruch Hu sent him down into this world as a kohen. But he has a blemish. And that blemish does not allow him to eat to what he calls. If you think about it, this doesn't compute. But the answer is simple. We human beings, we're human. In our eyes, if you see a blemish, right? If you see a blemish on a person, what happens when, unfortunately, a person walks into shul and has a blemish, right? Whatever they're thinking, whatever it is, your eyes can't stop going and staring at the blemish, even though your brain tells you stop staring, right? We all know what I'm talking about, right? That's a problem. So when the avodah takes place, says the Eibishter, kohen with the mum cannot do it. Because at the end of the day, the Kahanim are both the representatives of Hashem to us and our representatives to Hashem. And our representatives have to look the part. That's why the Kohen Gadol has to be the richest, the tall, the good looking, all that. He's got to look the part. Okay? So it has to be so good, but not so beautiful. Wolfson, exactly right. That's a flaw. You know that. Yeah, an anomaly is a problem. Not from the point of view of an Abinah Shalom, point of view of us. So now, when you're looking at over here in marriage, in any transaction, obviously a flaw, I'll give you guys an example. We just ordered a new freezer from Walmart. Walmart's having a great deal on a 7-foot cubic fridge, like for $150. It's great. Okay, so the first one came, working perfectly. but it's banged up. It must have gotten banged around. It's dented the outside. So my wife called Walmart. Walmart said, sure, we'll send you another one. Just send back this one. Right? You will send you that one, and then put this one into the box this one came in, and we'll pick it up and we'll send it back. Okay? Because that's the rule. A blemish, even though it doesn't actually affect the actual operations of the freezer. So in fact, we're probably going to keep the freezer and give the other one to my daughter, right? But the point is, at the end, we'll keep them. But the point here is, what was the thought? It's dented. Yeah, so what? It's a dent. It's like a car. It's like a car that gets dented. The truth is, it's on the outside. Still gets you from point A to point B. But the answer is, we all understand the dent bothers us, even though we know the dent doesn't mean anything. That's what we're saying over here. So, right? So Zogtikum, aren't you? And you're not going to be worried about that we might annul this retroactively and say retroactively she was never married to the guy and she should never have been eating teruma. Shalach la Rabbi Yehuda sent back to him about but you do not say this as well. I am certain about you 10 before that you are well versed in the breadth of Torah. Don't you know how to do it? A shivcha cannot that sleeping with her doesn't affect her ability to eat truma. Kaspa machila, but truma money, purchasing her with money allows her to eat truma. And we're not concerned with the possibility of an annulling factor that you're going to discover that she has boils under her clothes and that this deal is off. That the purchase is invalid. Zu should be also machila b'truma. This kohen is sleeping with this girl, entitles her to eat truma. Ain't a din shekas machila b'truma. That giving her money for the sake of Kiddushin should allow her to eat truma. And we're not going to worry about an annulling force that we're going to find a flaw later on that reverses the whole marriage. Elamai, so what can I do? Sharei amru chachamim arusa bas yisrael later achelis b'truma. That an arusa bas yisrael does not eat a truma. Yudalef amid alef. Mi'ad shikodesh l'chuppah. Till she gets fully married. Why? Mishum de'ula. Because of ula, that she's going to bring home food to the house that she's living in. Ben Bag, and Ben Bag, why does he not like our Kavachayma? Simpun Ba'avodim Leslie, because he does not agree that an annulling force exists with respect to the purchase of slaves. He says you're purchasing a slave to work. Who cares if they have a dent? This is the situation of the car. So the car has a dent or two, or my freezer has a dent or two. Does it work? Yes. Function over what's it called? Function over form. Thank you. Marriage function is all fine and dandy. Form is all that counts. We're so shallow. So the I don't sound like a tzaddik in the loop up here. Okay, so here we go.
By the way, Ulla's Gzera applies in every case, even when the reason for it doesn't exist. For example, if she was a single girl, she has no parents, she lives by herself. She gets engaged, so you could give her a tumor. She there's nobody in her house to give it to.
Doesn't matter.
It makes no
Doesn't
difference.
matter. It's all or nothing. By the way, since we're at the case over here that when it comes to marriage, it's form over function. Okay, so here's the great joke, but this is a joke that stays in this room. Okay, what do you call it? Marriage is like a tea bag. When you first get married, it's neatly folded and everything's great. Then you realize there are strings attached. Before you know it, you're in hot water, and at the end of the day, you're left holding a old bag. Okay, so there you go. Marriage is a tea bag. I heard this when I got married, by the way. Okay, or my Rav, the Unstofer Rav, the Gesundheit stark, told me when I got married. He says, just remember this. You gotta know this. Again, this stays right here. He says, when you said you get married, he says you gotta understand this. The morning after you're married, You turn and you look at this girl, and you see this girl that you married. No makeup, hair's a mess, bad breath, and you say, "Who's this stranger? I never saw her. I never saw this girl like this." That's the girl you married. Then before you know it, she's expecting Baruch Hashem. She's crazy. The mood swing, back and forth, pickles, ice cream, and all that. That's the girl you married. And then Baruch Hashem, she has a child, a healthy child, and all of a sudden you're not the most important person in her life. You're a distant second. If you don't know that, before you go into marriage, don't go into marriage. That was my chassid class with Rav Shia there. No, he didn't even go there. Died Sarah B'Shata. That died Sarah B'Shata. It's enough the troubles of their own time. It's very motivating. That's it. See, that's the way a Jewish boy gets married. It's already set up from the beginning. Yeah, I'm not what you That's it. Same thing. Okay. But remember this. What happens in shul stays in shul. Remember what I told you. The Gemara is written by men, for men. And by the way, there is a great truth to that. All kidding aside, the way the Gemara phrases itself, imagine if Smada was in the room to now. Right? I would have to teach this completely different. We'd have to learn this completely differently. And much more difficult. Because this would be far more difficult. I mean, and we haven't even got. It's not even insulting. You have to. I don't know. I honestly don't. I think in yeshiva they skip. In yeshiva they skip this. In yeshiva because Kiddushin is one of the masechtas that, let's say, Rabbi Gibber's sons are learning in yeshiva. I think the young one, the Bar Mitzvah boy, is learning Kiddushin this year. They're not going to learn this. They're going to skip 10, 15 down.
Who, when they set up with guys, they deliberately hold back information that they think is gonna affect the shidduch. They hold things back like defects or whatever, so they understand the system. I don't think it's right, but they do it.
I think you can't get over in the morning. That's a whole year thing. What does that mean?
No, but I'll tell you, he's right about this. This is a great question. This is a great question. And I know somebody who unfortunately eventually got divorced, got remarried and all that. She got married to a girl that was bipolar. Nobody told them. She dated, everything was great, pretty good girl. What do you call it? When there are met, this is a big question, and it's a great topic for Rabbi Gibber to talk about as what do you call it? But it's a dangerous topic. What are you allowed to share as a shadchan, and what are you not supposed to share? If you're asked the question, it's one thing. But what about sharing? So if you know somebody is on Prozac, just using something as simple as that.
So tell me what's going on.
I don't. I'm only posing the question. The truth of the matter is, we're looking here. We're seeing a flaw, a defect. Does retroactively affect a marriage? Now today we don't do that retroactively. Whatever. What? Whatever. Yeah. We fine. Ramesh. Actually, that was the famous given to Rabbi Greenblatt. I don't remember the story. Rabbi Greenblatt was in Tennessee, was the Rav in Tennessee, so Memphis, Tennessee. Anyways, a woman that had become from her, her son just got engaged, and then she came to him with her husband crying, saying that in fact the boy might be a mamzer because she had been previously married.
Okay.
And then and then she got a get, whatever it was, and there was no get.
Nope.
And then she married this new husband, and they had this son. And then and now he's engaged to a girl, and they didn't tell the girl any of this. What's going on? And now he would have to tell their poor son that he might be a mamzer and he can't even marry this Jewish girl. So Rav Greenblatt sent it to Rav Moshe. No. So Rav Greenblatt started doing research. And he went back and he found out who officiated the first marriage, the rabbi. So he went, who was no longer alive. And he went to the rabbi's house and she had a daughter. He started talking to the daughter that he's writing an article on the rabbis of Tennessee from the previous generation. Right? Oh, very good. She's talking about, yeah, my father officiated marriages. She said, in fact, he officiated my marriage. He said, really? He said, yeah, and here's my ksuba. My father, this is the daughter, my father signed on my own ksuba. He signed the ksuba too, the father of the bride. Yeah, okay, fine. He said, wow, can I take a picture of this? Or can I take whatever? Then he sent it to Rav Moshe. Rav Moshe said, that rabbi clearly didn't know what he was doing. Therefore, you could assume that other woman was never officially married. So therefore, she was never an Ashes Ish. So when she married her second husband, that was her first marriage. So the kid is kosher and he can marry anybody he wants. I'm just telling you what happened. The great Rav Moshe. There's no marriage. Because the rabbi that officiated didn't know what the heck he was doing. He can't be an aid on his own daughters. Only a married woman who has a child from another man creates a mamzer. Otherwise, there's no issues. And she didn't have another baby. She was never married, so no problems. Ramosha said, let's go.
A lot of that happening, right?
Mm-hmm.
Married civilly.
It's not a marriage.
And get divorced.
Was never married. Simplifies things greatly. That's Lubavitch. How does you see? Let me tell you, we have a Chabadski in the room. We talked about the DNA. That's a different question. That's Rav Haigoin's DNA test. We have a Chabadski in the room. Chabad, Chochma Bina Vidas. Chabadski. It's love, Chabadski, right? A civil means you go to the court. You got to believe that. Yeah, that's what. How does Lubavitch, okay, who is Makarev remarkably, right? A Makarev Jews, and they bring them back. How do they deal with it?
Right. We did literally hundreds of chuppah Kiddushin.
Right.
Okay. But none of them had Kiddushin. They were all married civilly.
Right. That's it. So you turn around, you have to do it very subtly. You make a whole party. You don't even call it a wedding. You call it a reconfirmation of a vow in Orthodox Jewish tradition. You change the wording as long as they understand that we're getting married here, right? We're reconsummating the marriage as they call it, right? There's ways of doing it that make it non-problematic, but you need big shoulders to pull this off. That's all. And let's keep going here. Okay, I know that's gonna go. We have to make some dent. So, Ben Bagbag Sipun Mavodim Leslie, and they explain in other words, each woman should be gully who, if the defects were in areas that are exposed, he saw them when he was purchasing the shivcha, so it's not a problem. Even woman should say. So, what about hidden defects? He bought the slave for work. It doesn't matter, right? In other words, the dents are not a problem.
Well, in your example of your freezer that you bought,
right?
With a dent, so you say, "Hey, but it works anyway."
Right.
But my dear friend, you paid for a perfect freezer.
That's why.
So you paid more than you should have.
So that's why Walmart sent me a new freezer.
Right.
And the only question is, do we return the old freezer or not? Or give that to my kids?
They probably
Because
don't
it's such
know
a good
what
deal.
about. They can't sell it, probably.
Right. So whatever. We'll figure it out. Right? Nimtsiganav oy kupsus ku
Justus.
justus. A
Who
kid, a
Justus?
thief or a kidnapper, right? A kidnapper is always worse than a thief, by the way. Kidnapping is chayiv misa. When you kidnap somebody, by the way, when in the Aseres Adibris, in the 10 utterances, when it says loy signav, you shall not steal, it means not to steal people. Do not kidnap. That's what it means over there. Not kidnap people. Kidnapping is chayiv misa. To
Because
take
not
somebody,
stealing.
what?
Because not stealing says someplace else in a different
Correct.
place.
Talking about it over there, where during the Aseres Adibris, right? Where it says over there, loy signav, you shall not steal, it means kidnapping. Exclusively. There's another place that says you shall not steal regularly. Kidnapping is worse. Okay. Higiyoy. This would not invalidate the purchase, for in such a case, the slave belongs to the buyer. My Amrit, what are you going to say? Listim mizuya no nichtav l'malchus, that if the slave is found to be an armed robber or a person who the kingdom has sentenced to death, that his purchase will become invalid. That's also incorrect. Henichu kala islu. Such people, there were reports, there are wanted signs for these guys. You knew what you were purchasing. You knew what flaws you were getting. That's why you were getting such a big discount on the purchase of this guy. Right? That's it. Yeah, you would know. There are no secrets in the naked city.
If you go to another, if you travel, a slave escapes in another city.
So certain things in a certain world, obviously, if that was the case, but we're talking about something within a kingdom where there's a call, and that's it. So says the Gemara, it can be said there's no such thing as an annulling force by a slave. So there's no reason to decree that he cannot eat it, the truma, because we'll never annul. So mechti, bein lamar u bein lamar, side of Ben Bagbag and side of Rabbi Yehuda loy achla. A woman betrothed to a kohen is not allowed to eat truma because of the rabbinical decree. My benayu, what in fact is the practical difference between the two of them? Ike benayu kibels mosar v'olam, where before Kiddushin, the kohen accepted to betroth the woman regardless of whether she has a physical abnormality or not. If she has a defect and he said, I'll take her anyway. Or where the father delivered the daughter to the agents of the husband, or where the father's agents continued to walk with the husband's agents after delivering the girl to them. According to one, it would be a good marriage because I'm not worried about an annulment. The other one would say, no. One other one would say, because of Ula, that she might bring home food, right, back to her siblings, you cannot. We're just going to 10:30 and that's it. Through money, Beis Shammai said she can be required with a dinner. Okay, remember Beis Hillel said you only need a peruta. So let's call it this way for the simplicity. Beis Hillel says you can marry her with a quarter. Beis Shammai says you got to give at least $1. Okay, we're now on 11:82. My tamar of the Beis Shammai. Now it gets a little easier. What's the time of Beis Shammai? Amar Rav Zera shekain ishim ifkedes alatzmo, because a woman is particular about herself. And she will not consent to be betrothed with less than a dinar. In other words, says, I have a certain amount of value. I'm not a piece of gum. In other words, says Beis Shammai, she's not a commodity. She's giving herself away. She's a person in the outside. She has to get something of value. Okay. What about the daughters of Rav Yanai? The Poktim and Nafshain, who were really particular regarding themselves, who would not be becoming trouble less than 3 kabs of gold dinars. Is it so that if one of these women stretched out her hand and accepted a single dinar from somebody else, that it would not, the Kiddushin would not be valid? That's not tenable because we don't have different laws for different women, right? Either it's a dinner for everybody or it's a pruta for everybody, right? But it doesn't, we don't bounce, we don't have individual laws based upon each person's individual arrogance, if you want to call it that way, right? So the Gemara Amalei, arrogance is the wrong word, but you know what I mean. I'm not speaking about a case where a woman stretches out her hand and knowingly, underline that word in your head, knowingly accepts the less than a dinar for Kiddushin. Even a Beis Shammai would agree that the Kiddushin takes effect. In other words, even with a pruta, a Beis Shammai would agree that it takes effect. Ki amina b'Kiddushin b'layla. I'm talking about when he betroths her by night and she's unable to see what she was accepting. Inami teshavi shliach, or where she appointed a shliach to accept the Kiddushin for her, and the agent accepts less than a dinar. In those cases, Beis Shammai says we could assume that a woman will not give herself away for less than a dinar, and the Kiddushin for less than that is not chal. Rabbi Yosef Amar, Tamai the Beis Shammai kid Rabbi Yehuda Amar Rabasi. The reason the Beis Shammai is predicated on what Rabbi Yehuda says in the name of Rabasi, the Amar Rabbi Yehuda Amar Rabasi. Kol kesef ha'omer b'Torah kesef tzuri. Any kesef mentioned in the Torah is talking about Tyrenian currency, meaning silver currency. Okay, kesef Medina is talking about provincial currency. Obviously, provincial currency is actually worth less than is usually 1/8 of biblical. That's the difference. We're not 1/7. We're not going to get bogged down in these mathematical formulas here. We're going to fly through it. Yeah, exactly. In other words, this is literally the Gemara is talking about currency fluctuation against one land. In other words, the biblical currency was the American greenback, and everything else was pegged to the American greenback. Amazing. Okay? Kufa. And again, I'm flying through this, okay? Gold kesef oimer b'Torah kesef tsuri. Any money mentioned in the Torah is Tyrenian cards. Michel Debrayim kesef Medina. Provincial currency. The klolo, and is this really a general principle that it's always Tyrenian currency? And now we're going to move way right through. 11b1. V'arei tana diksiv. But it writes Kiyitain ish el re'eu kesef oikedim lishmar. When a man should give his friend money or utensils to watch. V'tanan, and we learned Shavua sadayonim atanya shnei kesef oidah shava pruta. The oath in which a kohen imposes on a dependent in a case of moida b'miksas, where he agrees to part of the thing. He says part of it I'm owed, is a claim of no less than 2 silver ma. 2 silver ma. That's a Tyrenian coin of the least value. A ma is the lowest of the value. And an admission of no less than the value of a pruta. From the fact that the Mishnah requires a claim of 2 ma, not just 1, it appears that the Torah does not always denote silver coinage. It has to be valued to a pruta, and obviously 1 silver coin is obviously worth more than any quarter that today has no silver in it whatsoever. So the Gemara Hasab Dumya de Kalim. Over there they compared the money to utensils. Ma Kalim, utensils is Shnayim, is the least amount, the plural is 2. Av Kesef Shnayim, Uma Kesef Dova Chashuv. And just like money is an item of significance, Av Kaleb Dova Chashuv also has to be something of significance, not merely a shard that has no value. Ba'arei Maisa Diksiv, with regard to Maisa Sheni, it says, "V'tzarato hakesef b'yadecha," and you shall bind up the kesef in your hand. In other words, in redeeming the grains of Maisa Sheni onto money, so that you can carry the money to Yerushalayim and spend it there. Remember, Maisa Sheni has to be spent in Jerusalem. V'tanan hapoyret selah mimois Maisa Sheni, one who exchanges a silver seller for the copper pruta coins he had used to redeem Maisa Sheni. In other words, he first redeemed them onto quarters, copper quarters. He then took the copper quarters and redeemed them onto silver dollars. Okay? So, Now, since the Mishnah speaks of a person who redeemed Ma'aser Sheni using copper prutas, it means that kesef is not always silver coinage. Zakti Gemara, kesef ha kesef riba. In referring to Ma'aser Sheni, the Torah could have written kesef without the extra hey, ha, which remember it's hey hayidiyah, the hey that's underlined. So here's the underlying to tell us that when it comes to Ma'aser Sheni, since I'm allowing redemption, you can redeem it even onto copper coinage, as opposed to the normal situation of silver coinage. But regarding consecrated property, the Torah uses the word kesef, and also not kesef become law, and he gave kesef and it became his. This is a case of redeeming kedushas domim, things that are sanctified in their value, not intrinsic. Remember that kedushas aguf, not intrinsically holy. Va'oma Shmuel, and Shmuel says, "Hegdish shava moneh shechilu al shava pruta." A consecrated property that was worth a ma is redeemed using a coin only worth a pruta. Mechalelai, it's considered redeemed. Now, how is that possible? A pruta is copper, a ma is silver. But you just said that all money mentioned in the Torah is silver coinage, and you see here it's not. 11b2, hasamnami kesef yolam mi ma'aser. Since this is Ma'aser is holy, right, in its value, Kiddushin, Ma'aser Sheni is holy in its value because you can redeem it. So we learn Ma'aser to Ma'aser that any redemption could be done even with copper coinage as opposed to anything else. Zakti Gemara Barei Kedusha Isha Diksiv. Now we're coming to it. Marriage to a woman. Ki yikach ish isha uba'ala, when a man shall take a woman and cohabitate with her, even though money is not explicitly mentioned in the pasuk, we nonetheless v'goma kicha misteyap, right? We make the gezerah shabbat of taking from the purchase of the field of Ephron from Abraham Avinu, where the case of money, remember, Arba Meyas Kesef, 400 Kesef Beiniyah Bein Chamahi. $600,000 between me and you. What is it? Right? Big special deal, exactly, but it's not. Beis Hillel said, right? Bepruto b'shava pruta. Kiddushin could be done with a pruta or an item worth of pruta. How could that be? If the Torah uses the word by Ephron Kesef, and we compare kicha from kesef by Ephron to marriage, so therefore it should require silver coinage. Name a Rav Asi Abaya to Beis Shammai. Are you saying that Rav Ashi holds like Beis Shammai? And we know that's impossible because we always paskin like Beis Hillel. So the Gemara but this is what Rav Ashi is saying. Rav Yehuda Rav Asi kol kesef kotzavay mibetayra kesef tzuri. Any set amount, like Erechin. Remember, if a person makes a vow against his own value, the Torah has different values of a child from 30 days old to 5 years old, from 5 to 20, from 20 to 60, from 60 and onwards, so on and so forth. Right? Kol kesef and kotzuv hoime b'Torah kesef tzuri is silver currency. V'shal divrayim kesef medina. From the rabbinical legislation, it's provincial. Since the Rav Asi is only talking to a set amount of kesef, this principle is clearly not in Kiddushin because there's no set amount mentioned in the Torah. We're only working it out rabbinically. My kamashmalam, what are you saying? Tanina, with that we already learned in the Mishnah. Chamesh shleim shalbein, when you want to redeem your firstborn son, a pidyon aben, which us Leviim very rarely see, and it's a very rare situation. How many pidyon abens have you been to in your life? One. Amazing, right? You've been to many. How many? You've been to many. Oh,
been to many, but my grandson.
Oh, that's true. That's right. Jerry's grandson. That's right. I've been to maybe 5 in my entire life. Right. That's it. Because you have to understand. First of all, it has to be a firstborn son. Second of all, it has to be born regularly, vaginally, not yotzid.
And the mother and father are both Yisraelim.
And both the mother and the father have to be Yisraels, not Levi's or Kain's. So And no miscarriages prior to that. I mean, it's very hard to get to a yeah. So, but array Kiddushin, it's of my Kamash Tanina. Chamish Shloim Shalbed, the 5 Shloim which the Torah prescribes for the redemption of a son. Shloishim Shalevet, or the 30 Shloim fine imposed upon the owner of an ox that gored and killed a Canaanite slave. V'chamishim Shaloinis V'shalmafata, or the 50 Shloim being for the rapist or seducer of an unmarried Nara. Okay? Meir Shalmoiti Shemra, or the 100 Shloim fine imposed on one who defames his newly married wife. Kula b'shekel hakodesh b'manatzuri. All of them are computed by the shekel of the holy of the Beis Hamikdash in silver mana. So how, since the Mishnah is teaching us that only specific amounts of kesef are done with the silver coinage and everything else is not, I didn't need Rav Asi to tell me that. I had a Mishnah already 400 years earlier. Ela v'shel devrayim kesef medina mitzichle. Rav Asi is coming to tell us only about the rabbinic legislation that is dealing with provincial currency like we have, copper currency. Deloitte Tanan, because that's not taught in the Mishnah. Titania, one who delivers a blow to the ear of his friend must pay a seller as compensation for his humiliation. 11b3. Veloy Tema, my seller, and the mirage, and it does not say to what kind of seller referring to. Our bezuzah, 4 dinars. Elamai seller palga dezuzah. Rather, the answer to the question to what type of sellers are we talking about? It's that a half a zuv, a provincial seller. The avni inchi dekari lepalga zuzah is tirari, because the people are company are normally called a half a zuz an istira, istira talki, right? That's what they call it. Just give me a second. Let's see if we want to stop right over here. We'll stop right over here. Okay, we'll stop over here. Now, tomorrow I'm about to tell Matthew. The Shia probably is 5:30, give or take, right? It's got to be or 5:15, whatever. I'd like to start a half hour earlier if we can, so that we can continue to catch up.
Hour and a half.
I do an hour and a half as opposed to an hour. Is everybody okay with that? Now let me go run out and find out what time.
How can the walking situation over here with this beautiful piece of land?
Great. At 8:30 and you stay in the shade.
So I do what I did a couple of years ago. I leave a change of clothing here. I come here with shorts and what's down to do change of clothing. What's the big deal?
It's a long
I have
shot.
people that drive with the curves on here. You should have a locker by now. Huh? I didn't know. Go right through, back side over there. You see the locker right there? It's the locker. Yeah. It's recently a year. I leave liquor here. I leave clothing here. I leave all kinds of stuff. I tell lockers.
That Yomi is set for 5:30. Let's, if we can, if everybody's okay, to come 5. No, 5. Set on the charts for 5:30. What do you call it? If your wives will have 5, okay? Why? Because this way we could do some sort of catch, which we did today actually. Guess you didn't notice we did the whole doc here at the last 5 minutes.
Your next son got a job. Yay. Assistant rabbi, Great Neck Synagogue.
Oh, that's a big job. Yeah. But that's by the Iranians, not an easy job.
No, the Iranians is further in Kingsport. No, the Great Neck Synagogue is all Ashkenaz, not Great Neck. What's his name? No.